fascinating to dive into history and realize that, like, oh, actually, things are much different than we believed. And again, this is allegedly, I wasn't alive back then, but this is what I choose to believe because it intuitively makes sense to me. And for anyone listening, like I said, we're meaning making machines. And so what I always tell people is, they're like, a lot of people are using science as a quote unquote religion these days in many different ways. And what I say to them is, hey, if you want to live in a world that has no magic, that everything is scientifically understood, right? And that there's no mystery to anything, and that makes your life feel amazing, then go do that, right? I'm not here to tell anyone, I think I said in the first one, how to live their life, what they should do, what they should not do. What I know in my own personal experience of life and what I teach other people to do is to make your own experience of life. Our innate nature as human beings is to be creative. And one of the ways we do that, just as children do, is to create our own reality. And I really believe that's why we're here in Earth School, is to remember who and what we truly are, where we come from, and what our power is as manifestors in this world. And as I've started to tune into that and learn about Hermeticism and, become an initiate in the mystery schools and these types of things, I've started to find a lot of breadcrumbs and a lot of synchronicities. And again, some people will say, oh, those are just coincidences. Hey, whatever you want to believe in your life is what you get to believe. But I choose to believe that nothing is coincidence, right? And that incidents that coincide are meant to coincide for a specific reason. Now, what that reason is, you get to not make up, but you get to find. And so it's really fascinating. These are the things that I love getting into. I love the point in a conversation where I realize I don't know anything, right? Like, that's my favorite part to get to, because once I don't know anything, all of life becomes magic again, and all of life becomes play. And I think that's one of the biggest thirst traps. I might have mentioned this in the first part, where I think one of the biggest challenges people get into is they want to know things. And as I read more books, I realize, oh, I didn't know anything about anything. And then I read another book, I'm like, I didn't know about that, right? And so it's the not knowing that is actually the most fun. Yet society paints it as knowing is going to get you the farthest in life. And I think that's one of the biggest thirst traps.
Well, like the Buddha said, it's the root of suffering is grasping and clinging. And I think that's it. It's you hit the nail on the head, that it's rooted in insecurity and trying to grasp onto the illusion of control, right? Thinking that science is something we can predict. It's repeatable is the whole scientific method, that's what gives it validity. But if you really study the work of any true scientist, I think, Ryan, the actual definition is questioning and verify. And, you got to, unfortunately, what's going on with the pandemic in 2022, you can't even question the narrative, and you're considered a heretic and a conspiracy person. But that's the whole nature of science, is you have to question everything. And I think it's an understandable but sad depiction of people really grasping for control and not to be open to the mystery and the imagination, and omitting the not knowing, like you said, like having that beginner's mind is critical to, what's required though is to have a level of, inner security, Ryan. Like, a lot of people can't get to that openness, which is the feminine, being open, and the lack of arrogance, like, I don't know, is because they don't feel secure enough within themselves to be safe to not know.
Yes, exactly. And, it's perfect that you said that, because it is the law of correspondence, as within, so without. We can only experience in life what we're first experiencing within. And so, this is one of the things that I get really, curious as to, when people, might call me a conspiracy theorist or things like that. I go, hey, what separates a theorist from a conspiracy theorist, right? And 9 times out of 10, they have no idea. They're like, I don't know, right? But they're just so triggered that they want to say conspiracy theorist, because if they say conspiracy theorist, they're not required to learn anything or even think about what I'm saying, because it gets lumped into this category. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't involve them having to do any work on their part to actually become an individual and make their own mind up about what I'm saying. And what I always say when, I'm on podcasts or when I'm talking to people is, hey, don't believe anything I say. Go question it and figure it out for yourself. Be your own real scientist. And the funny thing about science is that, ancient practices like alchemy, they included science and spirituality as 2 sides of the same coin. The light bulb was magic until it was proven by science, right? And so a lot of the things that, might seem woo-woo today are tomorrow's scientific discovery. Doesn't make it any less magic. It just allows people to have their intellect be able to grasp what might be going on. But the greatest thing is when you really start looking into ancient civilizations and the technologies they had. I mean, there might be, like I said, there might be science behind it, right? In every case there is quantum physics, things like this, but it doesn't make it any less magic. I mean, hearing about, the fact that I was just watching something on Gaia where they were talking about the Bosnian pyramids they've been finding. And this was back in 2012. So it's probably pretty old news now, but this gentleman, I forget his name. I think his first name was Isaac. He's from Bosnia, and he found this pyramid that essentially was covered by earth. But when he looked at it on a satellite, he could just tell. I mean, it was 4 sides. It was perfectly, geometrically sound. And what they were finding was that there was an insane amount of energy being cultivated in this. And they found the same thing in the Great Pyramid of Egypt and pretty much every pyramid of the world they've tested. Yeah. And it's just fascinating because I get so drawn in knowing that, like, hey, whatever version of history we were given is definitely not what I choose to believe, not because I know it objectively, because it doesn't sit right with me. And so getting fascinated and following the intuition of like, hey, there's something there for you to look into it, solve the mystery or find the mystery of life. I think, talking about masculine and feminine energy is great to provide a structure, right? Like, we had a time that we were going to start podcasting. We have a time that we're going to stop podcasting. That's great, right? It's great to have structure so you can go through your day. But I think the masculine energy runs amok because it's not balanced with the feminine. And the feminine is being able to relax. It's being able to be content where you're at. It's being able to be, not knowing anything and find safety in that. And find safety in the unknown, right, in life. And I think that's when we look at society right now, I think we are moving into an era where feminine energy is becoming much more of a thing again. And thank goodness, because if you look at like the 50s and 60s, not necessarily the 60s, but especially like the 50s, I mean, what a weird time, right, to be alive. And that was like the pivotal moment of masculine energy, I really feel like, and not divine masculine energy, but this version of masculine energy that we see today.